Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Tapped In Indie Wrestling, part of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you this fine morning?
Dude, I'm exhausted. What a weekend. That's all I can say. I am officially old, dude. I made the point the other day. I am just tired this weekend.
Yes, we're going to talk about some of our trips. One of our trips, I made the mistake of stopping at Waffle House at 1 in the morning and got home about 3. And if I can do that once a year, I'll be all right. But it was well worth the trip.
Yeah.
Fans, if you want to hear even more about some of our trips, we're going to talk about them. But on Patreon, there's going to be a lot more content. You need to go become a member there, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Also, you can also become a member on YouTube. And if you're going to do that, we need you to subscribe. We need you to like those videos. And we also need you to hit that bell so you get the notifications and you know when new content is dropping. And let me tell you, new content has been dropping. Maybe video's not your thing and it's all audio you want. Hey, we're wherever you can find your audio podcast. Tapped. Search for the Tapped Out Podcast. We got iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, CB Radio. We've got it all. And we're just grateful for all of your support. And the support is growing. The show is growing. And I couldn't be more excited about that.
Yeah, man. It's lots of stuff going on. I know you've got some stuff you sent over to me last night. That stuff will start going up. And I'm going to have to ration it out over the week so it's not all at once. And so Patreon, everybody knows, we've got content now dropping at different tiers. So pay attention to the tiers and you'll probably see it'll tell you, hey, I wanted to listen to that. Okay, well, here's the tier it's at. So you kind of learn. The $10 range is going to be kind of the sweet spot. There will be some that we do at the $25 level. But remember, the Coffee and Crossfaces, if you're a $25 member, you can actually join those episodes when we record those in the morning. And just, check out how we're doing those. Literally, if you're a $25 member or higher, you can message me. And, we'll get it in the schedule and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So it's been fun. It's been a fun ride for sure.
Yeah. So, like I said, lots going on, lots of content dropping. So you want to become a member so you don't miss any of our hot takes. You never know what we're going to say.
Well, here's the thing. So I had a conversation over the weekend. And if you're listening to this particular episode, you're an indie wrestling fan, especially here in the state of Georgia. I got a commitment to come on behind the paywall and talk indie wrestling from Gary Lamb.
Oh.
So that's one, if you're an indie fan, that's the one you kind of want to be like, okay, why would I sign up for this? Gary Lamb's committed to doing it pretty regularly, as close as we could get him to commit to regularly. And I think that alone will probably be worth the price of admission when Gary Lamb comes on and knows he's behind a paywall, the way he can say. Because, listen, he's not afraid to say much out in front of public, so I can't imagine what he'll do behind the paywall.
Well, as long as Gary knows that somebody's going to think he said something that he didn't say and tell all their friends, and then they're going to react to it. But isn't that what indie wrestling's all about?
100%, man. 100%.
Well, let's jump right into this week's Indy Rewind. So as we were saying, you heard us talk about, we went down to Action Wrestling there in Tyrone, Georgia. Quite the trip. Well worth it. We might be complaining about being out late, but it was totally worth it. Would totally do it again. And on behalf of the team, I want to say thanks to Matt Griffin, Scott Hensley. They really I felt like they rolled out the red carpet for us, made us feel welcome. And it was an exciting night of wrestling action.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was your first show, my first show. It was Myron's first action show in that building. He had done one of their beer barn, I think is the name of the building that they run, one of the brewery shows they do, kind of thing. But that was his first show in that building. And listen, I mentioned it on last week's episode. Were we, like me, when I say me, and, were we the ones wrong about, like, oh, it's the best bell to bell, right? So we basically thought that this action was a super indie show that, look, and we had watched it on IWTV and stuff like that. But again, your point to like the vibe of the building, being inside the building, it was far from just wrestling. Like it was lots of other pieces, and like I said, it was cool to be welcomed, and pretty much seemed like everybody for the most part were glad we were there.
Yeah, that is a really cool building to watch wrestling in. There's not a bad seat in the house.
There wasn't an empty seat in the house either.
No, we stood the whole time, and that's not a complaint. There were some seats we could have gotten to, but I kind of liked what our view was, and so just kind of made the decision. All right, this is kind of where I want to be, because we were we were kind of straight on to the ring. We were right there by some of the gimmick tables, and we mentioned bell to bell wrestling. But in that opening match, you had the one called Manders beating Alex Kane for the Action Wrestling Heavyweight title. And that's been a multi-year story of Manders won the Futures Tournament, then Manders won the SCI, and Manders has been in action. And they have been building him to this moment, and you could feel it. You could feel it in the match. That crowd, they could have gone home after that match and gone home happy.
Yeah, that's... clearly if you've watched enough action over the years, you've noticed that they have a trend of doing stuff like that, where they'll take somebody and you can see it's almost a national stage feel of where they take somebody and it's they level them up, is the way I like to call it. It's like, hey, they're here, then they're here, then they're here, and now they're the top guy. Like it's works their way up. They don't usually bring a guy in and he's boom, he's their top champion. Like everybody levels up, and I think it's a good storytelling device in a way, that they use.
Yeah, I think storytelling, the whole card was storytelling. The tag team title match, somebody's getting their head shaved, and if it was a no rules kind of match. There's ladders, there's chairs. The crowd was hungry for some tables. They didn't get that. So maybe not your cup of tea as a match, but you want to talk about a tremendous finish. When Matt Sells sacrificed himself, he taps out to save his partner, Jaden Newman, and then starts getting his head shaved by Shug D. And Shug's taking his sweet time. It was tremendous. It was a tremendous thing to watch. And then Matt Sells, when he first did it, I didn't know if I liked it. But then I thought, this is the most babyface thing ever, to say, give me those shears. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction.
Yeah.
And shaved his own head. It was a good piece of business.
Yeah, he took Shug D's heel moment from him as the ultimate babyface move. Yeah, we've talked about that, and I was like, dude, I loved it when we first had the conversation about it. And I'm like, dude, he completely took away like the bad guys, enjoyment of it, because then Shug's like, what are you doing? It's not supposed to be like this. Like he's mad. Like I'm supposed to be getting to enjoy this, and you just took it away from me. And here's the thing: clearly, that's not even the end of it.
No.
So that's the cool part of they're still running with that story. And like I said, I'm going back to something I said a minute ago. The rumor, the narrative of action is it's indie wrestling in the sense of let's bring some guys in. They're going to have some great matches, and that's what they do. That's their best thing, right? And by the way, they gave you that with Mustafa Ali and Landon Hale, right?
Yes.
But it didn't. But here's the crazy thing, they even tweaked a little story into that one where two guys had never met. So it goes back to like the narrative that's out there probably is wrong. Like, because I didn't feel that at all in the building.
Right. Now, I think the narrative is correct in the sense, does Action have some of the best, if not the best, in-ring work?
Sure.
Yes. But that's always debatable depending on what you like. But to say that they're just, they're just wrestling, nothing else. Even the main event, Adam Priest challenging Cruel for the IWTV title, that even had, hey, Cruel's never beat me in a regular wrestling match. And then how do you do this match of Cruel and Adam Priest, there's such a contrast in size and styles, and they did it. like, okay, this is the template for how you do a match like that. And then they did the dusty finish as half the crowd was leaving the building. But they set up a cage match for their next show back in Tyrone, and the crowd was pretty hot for that.
Yeah. It's one lesson to be learned for especially like I say indie wrestling fans who listen to this. Don't leave until you know the show's over. And by the way, if you have not noticed, they will tell you when the show is actually over, because somebody will say, come back and see us, and they'll tell you the date and the time and what's going, that usually there's a match announcement in there. Then it's safe to go home, because I've noticed it in multiple promotions. It's a 1, 2, 3, or there's a tap out or something in the main, whatever. And people are like up and they start going through, and then like they're halfway or 3/4 out the door and something's happening. So I'm like, it's like when certain scenes are happening at the end of the Marvel movie, like, hey, you might want to make sure this thing is done before you walk out. Just saying. And I'm not even talking about post-credit scenes, but maybe that is the perfect analogy for this.
Yeah,
There's a post-credit scene, guys. You might want to hang around and check this out and quit walking away. So.
Yeah, I think a good indie wrestling show is like a good Marvel movie. It connects to the other shows that you're doing, leaves you wanting more, and sometimes has a post-credit scene that is very good. So again, can't say thank you enough to those guys. And as soon as we can, we're going to be back down there. And if you're in the Chattanooga area, definitely, if you've never been to the SCI, it's a phenomenal thing. You're going to see people who are going to get signed. And it's just a really cool vibe. And it's really it's not a family atmosphere in sense, bring your 8-year-old kid, but it is like you kind of get to know these people, and they've created a really good family environment there with the SCI.
Oh, agreed.
You had a doubleheader this weekend, and you headed down to Disruptor down in Buford, Georgia, and you were telling me how amazing that show was.
They never disappoint. Look, the highlight of the show, obviously, there wasn't really a post-credit scene per se at this one. The post-credit scene was just a massive celebration. They brought in a lot of the talent came in from the back. Vari Morales defeats Slim J to become their new their top champion there in the promotion. And look, we've talked about Vari, especially in the last few weeks, trying to, like, how does this guy not get more love? Him and Slim J tore the house down. No disqualification, falls count anywhere. Dude, they're diving off balconies. They're diving. Slim J did a column that was probably 15, 20 foot up. Did a coffin drop off of it onto about 4 guys. Yeah, dude, it was a crazy sight. And Vari swung for the fences on what may be one of the hardest chair shots I've seen in person. Like it was he hit a home run. Let's just go with that, and I'll leave it at that. So, but the big, other big story, they crowned after all the qualifiers, the first few shows, and Matt Sells, drinking his way into the match, they crowned the Party Animal Championship. CB Suave, Man Scout, and Matt Sells. I mean, like, yes, it was as entertaining as you could possibly think when I said those 3 names. I couldn't even begin to tell you. I think you said that you'd seen the spot, the 2 guys working while Man Scout runs the ropes. That just was entertaining. It was hilarious. But CB Suave, who we've had a ton of love, like he's on a great run right now, captures the first ever Party Animal Championship, dude. It's a gorgeous belt. It's like orange looking, as the leather's like orange, and it's pretty cool. You got to check it out. I'm sure. Give CB Suave a follow or Disruptor a follow on social media. You'll see it. I saw him taking shots, pictures with that title in the back. So I'm sure that those are becoming sooner than later. But look, Disruptor's a long show, and when you go, you're getting a long show because they've been asked to do a long show. So
right,
and it's just, I mean, a great, like you said, that is an atmosphere show.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna go. I mean, look, I had hot wings. I had I mean, I had their brownie again. I'm like, look, yeah, I'm addicted to this brownie thing they've got. But it's like, you got guys up on the stage where, they're drinking a beer, they're just hanging out, they're eating wings, they're eating that bacon thing. Like, it's literally like, that's what that show is. Oh, and by the way, in the ring, you got some of the biggest and best talents in Georgia in there. And by the way, it's not just guys from Georgia. That's what I love about that show. It is out of state talents galore on that show. I do want to note, I had a conversation with somebody because I don't know all the information and I need to find out. I don't know where Big Trouble E or Big Ben, he said he's went by multiple things, Ben Bishop's from. If you see that dude on a poster, you probably want to go see him. Because I told somebody, he's better than adequate, but he can be adequate in the ring and he's going to get a look. Because not only is he 7 feet,
legit,
he's a thick, like 7 feet. There's a huge difference between, like, he is just jacked, big, thick, 7 foot. And he wrestled everybody's favorite snowflake, the Randy Whitworth guy or whatever.
Yeah.
His name, and dude, that was just it was a comedy match. It's supposed to be, right?
Right.
But it delivered. I can't look. Check out Disruptor. It's at Tannery Row. They do their ticket. By the way, you can buy your tickets online. Heaven for wow. But definitely the table's worth it. They sell tables all around so you can eat food and drink, and have a table. So I recommend that more than anything, to be honest with you. But it's just a crazy vibe, and they go out of their way to just make it a fun, entertaining show.
If you are a single guy in the Beaufort area and you want to take a woman out for an unforgettable first date, spring for one of those tables. The food is incredible. She'll never forget it. She may hate it, but she'll never forget it. And it's like taking her to the theater. There's music, there's action, there's drama, there's intrigue. And she's probably not going to be mad about watching guys run around with their shirts off. So,
it'll be unforgettable. Like you said, it may be a home run or it may be like you just crash and burn, but you will stand out from all of her other dates that she goes on. We'll put it to you that way.
Yeah. She may end up marrying some other guy, but she'll always have the first date story with you.
Correct.
Palmetto Championship Wrestling had a packed house in Camden, South Carolina. I'm waiting on results from that one. Asylum Pro Wrestling in Bowling Springs, South Carolina. It used to be American Pro Wrestling. They had one of their biggest shows ever. They've done a lot of renovations to that building. They had TNA's John Schuyler there for a show. Brett Wolverton, who we saw at Action. Then on Saturday, he was at Coastal Empire to be their ring announcer. And that I've seen some clips from that show, and we've heard some of the results from that one.
Yeah. Listen, we knew that the death match with Chip Schuyler and Zach Mosley was going to be, right up there. And clearly it delivered. We've seen the clips. Of course, the old skewer shots out there. That video's online. But Zach, of course, goes over because that's what Zach does. Zach Mosley picks up W's.
And Donald Jakes got hit with a light tube.
Yeah. Blessings to you, Father. I'm not really sure what that was about, but hey, that is what it is, right? Look, on that show, though, we did want to say get well soon. I saw Dion Summers. He was injured he hurt his elbow, so we want to make sure he gets better, bounces back pretty quick, and we hope the kid, I always hate to see that. Look, I mean, we talked about Disruptor a minute, like Slim J busted open. I'm sure he'll heal up fine because he's a tough guy. So, and Dion Summers, I'm sure the same, right? So,
their next show is June the 8th. And one of the main events is going to be, I believe, Simon Sermon and Chip Schuyler versus Zach Mosley and Pepper Bottom. And if you can go on YouTube and find all the Coastal Empire shows. I've been going back and watching some of those, and that's a great way to support them, but also to follow some of the angles, some of the storylines, and see some good matches.
I love companies like Coastal Empire that are putting their shows up on YouTube because it is a thing of, like what can happen, it can be intimidating to go to a new promotion because you're like, I don't know any of the stories. I don't know anything that's going on. I don't want to feel lost. I love that they have this option. Like, go check, like I said, Coastal Empire, go. What do we always tell them? Like the page, subscribe to the page, turn the notifications on when their shows drop. Because look, the new one will be out soon, but you can catch up on those stories. Because I would gamble to say if you go back for the last 3 or 4 shows, you'd probably be caught up overall.
Right.
You know, watch them all to support them. But I'm saying, but if you were just trying to catch up before you went to a show, I think you're probably going to pull that off pretty good just by going back. But like I said, I think the big thing is it is a good way to support them as well.
There was a show in Rome, Georgia. If you follow wrestling, KLT earlier merged with what was NAWA to form NAWA Classic. We've heard a few things about that show that maybe we'll get into a little bit later. AML, Statesville, North Carolina, absolute packed house there. Brock and CW Anderson defeated the Dawsons to become the new tag team champs. AML is on. They are hot, man. They are on a tremendous run right now. Leading up to WrestleCade, they announced Great Khali making his first appearance at WrestleCade, making his first appearance anywhere maybe in the Carolinas and Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know we joked about that, right? But it was like, dude, no, if you're ever going to get this appearance and you're going to get this autograph or a meet and greet or whatever they're going to do, yeah, this is probably your time you're going to want to do it because I can't tell you. It's not like a lot of talents where you're like, oh, well, you could probably catch them at XYZ convention.
Right.
Like, I don't know about this one, dude. This might be one like you got to cash in on. And that's the crazy part. You know, if I'm sitting there going like, oh, you know, I might have to do this one because I don't know if I'll ever see this guy again, you know.
Right.
But let me ask you this because you know the Carolinas a lot more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the viewpoint that I have, Tracy and them just crush it at AML. Are they the measuring, like, are they the bar hands down above? And, you know, like, are they the bar in the Carolinas?
In some ways, 100% yes. You've got Deadlock Pro, which is in the Durham area. And I think Deadlock Pro is becoming what used to be when PWG was running in California. Well, they're still running, but it's not the same. I think Deadlock Pro has kind of filled in that as a super indie. I don't really consider Deadlock Pro a Carolinas promotion. They're a little bit bigger than that. But as far as Carolinas promotions, I do think AML is right there. It's a place that people want to work. It's not a super easy place to get into. You know, they've got their own training school, so they're building guys up to go there. As far as now, the crowds that they're drawing, yeah, I mean, they kind of are the measuring stick and the venues they run. And then again, the respect people have for Tracy Myers and Brian Hawks is pretty incredible. They're both stand-up guys. There was another show in the Carolinas this weekend. Brett Wolverton, he hit the triple play because he was at OSCW down on the Isle of Palms at the Windjammer. This is a big show they do every year. And I'm going to tell you, Bob Keller and the team down there, OSCW runs 4 or 5 times a year. They always put on a good show, very family-friendly show. This was an outdoor show. It was absolutely packed. In all the years that I've followed, that may have been the biggest crowd they had. And it's a fun show. Their shows go up on YouTube. But is it Old School Championship Wrestling? Why can't I not think of it? I just call it OSCW, but they always have guys you're going to see on TV eventually. That's where Austin Theory was real big down there. And I saw him in a show. I'm like, I better get his autograph because he may not be here long. And he wasn't.
Do you want to hear my funny Austin Theory story? Or no, actually, it wasn't Matt. It was Matt Riddle's story. This is a Matt Riddle story, not Austin Theory. Matt, by the way, Austin Theory was on the card. I was at the Landmark Arena, did a meet and greet. Somebody had done a, like it was a Christmas show and they were signing an ornament, like a Christmas ornament you would go through and they were all signing it. I was such a big fan of Ike Cross. I was like, I had become tight with Ike Cross.
Yes.
And so literally I am standing there chatting up Ike Cross, and Matt Riddle actually looks at me and goes, "Hey, do you want me to sign that?" Because I'm like literally not even paying any attention to Matt Riddle, who's sitting there signing autograph. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, dude, my bad." Like, yes, that I'm like, yeah, that was just an ironic. Like, Nick's a bigger fan of Ike Cross than Matt Riddle at the Landmark Arena.
Dude, Ike Cross is who I think I confused him with CT Keys. Ike Cross was at SCI one of the years we were there, and I was just like, who is this guy? Holy cow. Had never seen him before, and then kind of dropped out of wrestling, but Ike, come back. Come back. We would love to see you. So that's what happened over this super busy weekend in the Carolinas and Georgia. And there's more to come. Let's talk about making the drives. And let's show you where we're going to be Friday night in Canton, Georgia.
Attention wrestling fans. Join us Friday, May 3rd for SHW 62. Live from the Action Building in Canton, Georgia. Featuring special guest matchmaker Paul Walter Hauser. Plus, 2 rings, 1 cage as the hierarchy and the in-game collide in the War Chamber. All this and so much more. Tickets on sale at the door the night of the show starting at 5 p.m. Doors open at 7, bell time at 8. Invite all your friends and come see why we are SHW and this is our wrestling.
There you saw it, fans. Southern Honor Wrestling coming back to the Action Building in Canton this Friday night. The main event is the War Chamber, and the big question is who's going to replace Chip Day, who was injured by
the end game, man.
The end game.
Listen, I can't. Taking out Chip Day, because here's the thing: Chip Day, essentially at the last show, was like, I don't want to say the savior of the hierarchy, but like, hey, he came to their aid and leveled the playing field. We talked about they leveled the playing field. Now we're going to find out.
Right.
Well, immediately the end game goes to their tactics and takes out Chip Day. So now, like, who can replace Chip Day? That's the thing, right? Who's going to fill in that gap for the hierarchy?
Well, and here's the wild card in all of this is normally you've got Jake the Snake Roberts making some of those decisions, but this Friday we got a guest matchmaker, Paul Walter Hauser, and so I don't know how much he knows about Georgia wrestling. I don't know who he knows outside of Georgia wrestling. There's no telling who he's going to put in that 4th spot with the hierarchy. But
so
the thing,
I'll push back a little bit because he's a big wrestling fan.
Okay, I got you.
He's done some. I mean, look, he's been on TV with Jeff Jarrett on AEW. So he's been around the block. Now, how familiar is he with the Southern Honor? That's a good question.
Right.
But as far as actually wrestling goes, because here's the thing. With him being involved to the level that he's been around AEW and he's been behind, you know what I mean? There's no telling. The popular saying is you never know what's going to happen at Southern Honor Wrestling. With him and the connections he has, there's no telling who's going to show up to be Chip Day's replacement.
But well, maybe I should apologize because I'm looking at some of these other matches he's made. Kyle Matthews versus Jaden Newman. I mean, we've talked about Chip Day being a measuring stick. For somebody like Jaden Newman, who it's been incredible to watch his career over the last 3 or 4 years, this is a measuring stick match for him, getting in there with Kyle Matthews. Gunnar Miller and Sal Renaro. Gunnar Miller, who has been on a hot streak and still eyeing that Southern Honor heavyweight title. And then speaking of Jake the Snake, that Jake the Snake Legacy title going to be on the line is Hunter James in his first title defense. Not getting a night off as he's going to be battling Cody Fluffman.
Yeah, and look, we've become tremendous fans of Cody Fluffman. I know you've known him longer, but just has he had one of the most rapid ascensions in Georgia that we've seen in a long time. Like out of literally nowhere, he just skyrocketed and started working all these places. And I was like, the first time I saw him in person was at Southern Honor,
Right.
and was like, I don't know who this guy is. I mean, I've heard the name, but I was like, never seen him work in person, but I'm a fan. Like from day when I saw him in that ring, I was like, I'm a fan. I'm in. I'm all in.
If we could get Cody Fluffman to Southern Fried, because I'm thinking of the promotion he works, IWE, Viral, Phoenix, Southern Honor. He was at Action. He's checking off a lot of big names in a pretty short amount of time, and has gotten over everywhere he's been. That's been pretty incredible to watch.
I'm gonna steal your thunder because I don't think you mentioned them, but you didn't say it. I think he would be more over with that Southern Fried fan base than probably anywhere else.
Oh,
they would love him.
Yes. David Manders, hit him up. Yeah. And I think Cody. Yeah, I think.
Do you know who else would love him to death?
Who's that?
I would pay for a ticket to see him in Disruptor at Tannery Row in Buford. Cody Fluffman is built for that promotion.
Cody Fluffman, his first gimmick was kind of like the frat boy, party animal. Hello, CB Suave, looking for a title defense. This stuff writes itself, folks. I mean, that makes sense. So we'll put in some calls and see what kind of strings we can pull. Squared Circle Action Wrestling is going to be in the Royston Dome Friday night. They're in the Royston Dome every Friday night, so go check them out. Wrestling at Southern, huge weekend. They got a free show at Slow Pour Brewing on Saturday in Lawrenceville. They're also going to be at Southern Brewing in Monroe. They've got a show in Sugar Hill. The big news this week was the merger, I'm not sure the right word, the partnership maybe between Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling.
So I was clear. Here's the verbiage I was giving.
Okay.
They are pooling their resources.
Yes,
they're pooling their resources. And I'm going to tip my cap. He knows who gave me that. Said, hey, make sure that's kind of the verbiage is pooling our resources is what I was told.
Well, they released their schedule, and it was already the schedule that Wrestling at Southern had put out earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And you've got QT Marshall and Turnbuckle coming in, and that's a pretty exciting partnership. They've got some really big things that they're working on that are we've talked about this. We have become accustomed to big announcements that go nowhere in Georgia. And so so we're waiting on this announcement, but everything's already in place,
right,
for this to go somewhere. So
I think over the next few weeks, and especially as we get closer to June, as we get some more information, and the ability to speak freely on some of it.
Yeah.
And we'll have some more talk about it. Look, I'm excited for the June show. It's literally just up the road from me, the Jefferson show. I'm like, I'm ready. And so, I think, look, there's a lot of time will tell and we'll see. But I think that's life. That ain't just wrestling. That's, but right. I think there's a lot there to play out and see. And if all of the goals are achieved, I think it'll be something pretty special in indie wrestling. And I didn't say just in Georgia.
Maybe we should put a pin in this topic of how do you know when to make the announcement? Because it does feel like there's been some announcements this year that people have kind of jumped the gun, and it's like, hey, we're doing this. And then you don't hear anything. Anyway, put a pin in that. We'll talk about that later. They're also going to be in Swanee May 5th, which is Cinco de Mayo. There are going to be a ton of shows around. Lots going on Cinco de Mayo. So just get on Facebook and find out where all the shows are. There's also another little wrestling show, a little company, Southern Fried Championship Wrestling. They're back in Monroe Saturday night. You guys will be there. matches featuring Happy Madness versus CT Keys and Judias for those Southern Fried Tag Team titles. The Classics Championship will be on the line. Billy Buck, I think this might be his first or second title defense against Alexander Lev. And a match that we were looking through and we're like, Kenway versus Dominic Stuckey, two guys that don't normally work this promotion, getting a shot to not only, this is a kind of a two-level thing. They get to show what they have at Southern Fried, but they also, you got two guys who are probably fighting for the same spot in Georgia as far as being great young talents.
Yeah. I know Kenway's becoming, for multiple reasons, personal, everything, becoming more of a Georgia, he's coming home and he's going to be, I think you're going to see him in more places. And yeah, it just kind of both caught us off guard a little bit because Kenway's been there before. I've seen him there, but he's not like a regular. And Dominic Stuckey, like I was like out of nowhere at Southern Fried. I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be good. I love this, by the way. Todd, tipping my cap to you here. I love to see just trickles of new blood coming in, and not just like circulating the same talents, through the right. So I think this is a cool sign of like something new sliding in there. And kudos to Todd for, at least tipping his, putting his toe in the water there of some new people.
To me, the promotions that are being very successful right now and have been successful, there seems to me to be a lot more roster turnover. I've seen it in action, seen it in Southern Honor, seeing it in Southern Fried a little bit. IWE. So how do you keep those mainstays that your fans have fallen in love with, but then sprinkle in those new talents, and not just kind of sprinkle in the new talents, but help your fans fall in love with them and help them become mainstays?
Yeah. I just happened because I was curious. Darian Bingston, at Southern Honor, he's not one of their regulars.
Right.
Killjoy is in and out. Jaden Newman is new at Southern Honor. Hyena Herrera is new. You know what I mean? So, like you said, you're seeing some new blood trickling in these promotions, and I'm like, that's kind of what you need to keep it fresh and keep it, there's somebody new. And you can't, I always tell people, you can't build somebody new if you're not bringing in anybody that's not anybody that's new. It's just not going to happen. So.
Yes. So kudos to everybody and fans. It's one thing to listen to this show, go out, buy a ticket, support indie wrestling. If you love indie wrestling, you got to get out there and you got to support it. You got to put your money where your mouth is. Okay. So speaking of indie wrestling, we mentioned earlier some title changes. A new segment we're going to add to the show is every week we're going to do a roll call of champions. And this week we're going to look at some of the main titles in Georgia and just remind you who those champions are and tell you if it's very recent. So he'll be having his next title. He's actually been defending this in different shows, and that's the Anarchy champion, Nick Hagelin. Anarchy will be back June 22nd for Hardcore Hell there in Royston, but no one can say that Nick Hagelin is not a fighting champion.
No, he did it at the charity show they did. GCW, Georgia Championship Wrestling, just did. He was down there defending it. He's been doing it sometimes at Southern Fried. Of course, they ran Anarchy a couple times in Monroe, and he's been doing it at other shows just here and there. So, listen, I don't think anybody, if you've ever listened to any of our shows, you would be hard pressed to not know the love that I feel for Nick Hagelin. Love is, tactics, whatever. Doesn't matter. Good guy, bad guy. I've said for a year and a half, 2 years now, I think he's one of the best wrestlers in the state of Georgia. I do, because he can wrestle anybody and everybody. He's a 5-tool player. He's a Swiss Army knife. Like, hey, big guy, little guy, doesn't matter. Put him in there, and he's going to make them look good. He's going to look good, and you're going to have a great match. So, not surprising. He is the Anarchy champion, yes, but he's also in and out of title pictures in every other promotion that he's typically in. So
maybe I should, it's tax season, so we're going to see a bunch of shows pop up. Maybe I should use my tax money and book the Nick Hagelin, John Schuyler match I've been dying to see. I don't know if those guys have ever wrestled each other, but that's the dream match. The Carolina Standard versus Georgia Standard. I think that'd be tremendous.
Dylan, Disruptor.
Somebody make that. Tell me what it cost, and I'll see what I can do. I'll give some plasma or something. Southern Honor and Southern Fried have the same champion. That is Judias. He has been a fighting champion as well. And Judias always seems to be in the mix wherever he is.
Last show at Southern Fried, he defended the singles. This show, he's defending the tag. He's a tag champion there as well. He's not defending the Southern. He did at the last show. Joe Black had a dog collar match at the last Southern Honor show. He's going to be in a little thing called the War Chamber this show, so he's not defending his title. So so you're giving the champion a night off? Oh yeah, we're just putting him in a War Chamber match. So yeah, he's getting a night off. I said it last week. I will continue to bang this drum until it happens. If it doesn't happen, I'll continue to do it until he's no longer there. Judias should be, in my opinion, the NWA champion. Period. He's the best. He's the most champion-looking wrestler they have, in my opinion, on their roster. Just Corgan, put the belt on him and be done with it. Like that's what you should do, in my opinion.
Yes, I don't know if Billy Corgan's listening to this show, but we need some of his emissaries to let him know about the Tapped In indie show. IWE, their champions, White Mike, he won that in a 4-way match earlier this year. And White Mike, IWE is going to be running some shows in North Carolina, so I look for him to be defending that title in a second state.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how they book them, and I think somebody's sent something in that we might have to put up on Patreon about some of that stuff, so we'll see, yeah.
Yes, spoiler alert. How would I book IWE's show in North Carolina? Join the Patreon and find out. We mentioned one called Manders, the new Action Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. That young man, just a joy to watch. He's a throwback. And he's got a bright future ahead of him. John Davis, just 2 weekends ago, won the Viral Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Championship after a long chase. He finally defeated Owen Knight in the front office to win that title. Wrestle America, somebody who kind of was going back and forth with CB Suave, who had stolen the title, but now Dominic Stuckey. He is the rightful and full owner of the Wrestle America Championship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Terry Lawler is the Georgia Championship Wrestling Champion. They also ran a fundraising show this weekend and did very well. Deep South, Skrilla, their current heavyweight champion. Najicism, the Platinum Championship Wrestling Champion. We mentioned Disruptor, Barry Morales, winning that title from Slim J. And I think one of the stipulations was that the loser of that match can't challenge for the title as long as the other person holds it. So Slim J is going to have to wait his turn. And then Randy Reno, someone I'm not as familiar with, but wanting to watch some of his stuff. He is the Coastal Empire Heavyweight Champion. So if there's somebody we miss or if you're a wrestling promotion that hasn't put out there who your champions are, if you want us to talk about your champions, we got to know who they are. You got to put it on social media. And with the 702 wrestling promotions in Georgia, it's hard to catch them all. So tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Let us know who your champions are. It's not that we don't want to talk about them.
Listen, we have lives. It is really difficult, and we do our best. I mean, we dove through social media to find as much of this as we could. I mean, clearly you can tell. But look, there was one particular promotion who messaged us.
Yes.
Champions. Like, this is what happened at our show. These are things, our next show. I'm like, oh, well, thanks. That makes life easy. I mean, and we want to talk about everybody. We'll figure it out. And we are going to go in a rotation of every week where we're going to have, the heavyweight or your main champion, secondary titles, tag titles. We're going to focus on the divisions, over the stretch of weeks to make it easier to kind of cover versus trying to cover it all in 1 week.
Right.
So, and we'll note when your champion, just tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Send that to us, man. I promise you it makes our life easier, and we will get you in there. If if you're sending us the stuff, we're going to go out of our way to get to get your stuff on and make sure that you're talked about. That's our thing.
We want to have a partnership with promotions. We want to work together. We want to promoting you is promoting us. So like that's kind of how we look at things. So we also want to have a good relationship, not just with promotions, but with the fans. And some fans have sent in some pretty interesting questions. So let's head to this week's mailbag. Question number 1. Franklin from Rome wants to know, who, if anyone, can fill the shoes of Bryce Cannon, who had clearly separated himself from the pack as the best wrestler in Georgia this year so far?
Franklin. It's a bold statement to say that he's by far and away he separated himself away from the pack as the best wrestler in Georgia. I'm not saying they're wrong. Listen, it wasn't us saying that he's had the best year so far of a wrestler in Georgia at this point. And case can be made. We have this back and forth all the time about how subjective wrestling is and who's the top 5. By the way, there's a reason why we don't do a top 5 wrestlers in Georgia, because it's so subjective that yours wouldn't be mine and so forth. And it's all about, look, between the 3 of us that do these shows, me, you, and Myron, we like his, what he looks for in a wrestler and a match and a promotion is different than you and me. Mm-hmm. And we're all over the place. And we would sit here and we would literally probably, with 3 of us, argue about who's any position when it comes to wrestling.
Right.
Now, all that being said, at the same time, if your stance was Bryce Cannon's he's having the best year of any wrestler by far and away in the state of Georgia, I'm not going to say I'd sit here and fight with you about it, because I'd say, was he having the best year? Yes, I think he was. By far and away, okay, that's where the subjective part comes in. Do you think he had separated himself as the best, or would you still just make the case he was having the best year, period?
He was getting ready to go into a different gear. Okay. I think he was definitely ramping up from where he was. He just defeated Matt Cardona. He was having a really, really great run. And here's what I'll say, because it is all subjective. But when you have multiple outlets, let's say, including us, who don't necessarily communicate, and these outlets involve multiple people, 8 to 10 people, who, when given a voice, when given a vote, they said, hey, it's Bryce Cannon. Bryce Cannon's #1 wrestler in Georgia. Again, so it's not a conspiracy. It's not even a collaboration. It's there wasn't behind the scenes wheeling and dealing to say this about him. I think he's going to come back. We've said it. I'll say it till he comes back. He's going to come back better than ever, because he eats, sleeps, works, dreams about wrestling. And so,
because here's the thing, I want to ask you this, because this, folks, if you're watching video, if you're listening to audio, this is terrible audio podcasting. I'm holding up the one finger. He's going away, #1. Nobody took it from him. So even when he comes back, he will be, and I'm sure in his mind and in a lot of people's mind, #1. The promotions that he works, I think, more than anybody. That argument could be made too. Why was he the best? Because he was, because he was defeating Matt Cardona. He's having some of the everybody at the end of the year last year, Chip Day and him had what was considered to be one of the matches of the year. Oh, by the way, then he's in a tournament, and him and, Martin Stone / Danny Burch / Danny Briggs, had a tremendous match to crown the first ever, Southern States champion. I can't. And then here's the crazy thing. Here's one thing I do love so much about Bryce Cannon. So the reason, if you told me to put him at number one, or I wanted to put him at number one, my reasons are this: he was literally the top wrestler at the time in Georgia. And by the way, he was 1/3 of a package of exotic youth that you would argue were the tag team, the tag team in Georgia. You could have that debate. I get it. There's other teams, but a lot of people had them 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, in any of those that you're putting away. We talked about versatility with Nick Halen. Like, think about that. He's tag team, one of the best in Georgia, if not the best. Singles wrestler, one of the best, if not the best. So if you want me to plead my case why he was by far and away the best wrestler in Georgia, right there, because he was literally sitting on the top of 2 mountains in Georgia. It sucks. I mean, it really sucks. That is a massive hole, and we talked about that a little bit in the past week. We've had a week to digest this, and literally me and you had this conversation. Who can fill, because he didn't just create a void in a singles. He didn't just create it in a tag. Look, there's going to have to be somebody to step up, fill that hole. Cornelius Pepperbottom has an opportunity. Look, we hate it when these things happen. We talk about it on a national, talk about it on an Indian level. Cornelius Pepperbottom has an opportunity to elevate his game because he's going to have a window here where him and Zach Mosley are going to represent the exotic youth. Think about the pressure. And, look, I'm not trying to put any on Cornelius Pepperbottom. He's got to step up and fill that hole in exotic youth of Bryce Cannon. Time will tell whether he could do that. I think, it's a great opportunity for him because I think he is grossly overlooked because he's in a tag team with 2 of the best singles wrestlers in Georgia. He's in a 3-man group with Zach Mosley, who's crushing it everywhere as a single. Bryce Cannon's crushing it everywhere as a single. But as a tag team, that is just hard to believe in this day and time that that's even happening. Anywhere. Not in Georgia. Anywhere. So my argument, brace yourself, folks. Bryce Cannon is not just one of the best wrestlers in Georgia. You could probably make the case he's one of the best in the Southeast. Or even stretch that map. Would you agree with that?
No, I would 100% agree with that. He had started getting bookings in North Carolina, South Carolina. Let me throw a name out who fits some of the very narrow criteria we just mentioned about Bryce Cannon, and that's Sean Legacy, someone who is a tremendous singles wrestler and now getting some waves, making waves there with his partner in the Buff and Fluff connection. Sean Legacy is one of those guys. You better go out and buy a ticket for $10 to see him while you can. Yeah. So who else? I mean, if you're,
I'm sorry. I don't, and I hate it. I hate to say that.
No.
Sean Legacy's a great name, and I'll tell you why. Sean Legacy has the ability to do something that Bryce Cannon did/does. He individually, like, he is, it's serious business. It's wrestling. But at the same time, I by the way, this is a fan pointing to myself. This is a fan speaking. I can't tell you how much I enjoy when I see a wrestler who's like a wrestler not take himself so serious that he can't have a little fun like we see Bryce, Zach, Pep have in Exotic Youth. I don't know there's an example of that outside of that group that is just as much than Sean Legacy, because to see him wrestle like his what was his gimmick? You know it better. Like the Galaxy's hero.
Galaxy's only hero.
Yeah. But then to just slide over and look, him and Cody Fluffman, the Buff and Fluff, it's just fun. Yes. It's one of the funnest tag teams to watch. And that's why I agree. I think Sean Legacy might be the closest thing as far as somebody that could probably pull off the single/tag team thing. Sorry, I had to go down that rabbit hole.
Here's the thing that I would say to every young Georgia wrestler right now. The loss of Bryce Cannon for the remainder of this year has created a huge, huge opening. And if I were you and I were not working for some of these promotions, I would say, hey, I know Bryce Cannon got hurt. I'd love to come in. Let's do business. How do I get in on your show? Like, you got to work. I mean, there's only so many spots in Georgia. And
can I say it's what you just said? And I'm really bad on this episode because
you're
triggering these thoughts in my head as I go along. If you're sick and tired of seeing, because we always hear this, it's the same names at the top of every list.
Right.
Okay, a hole just opened in. Bischoff might say this about Tony Khan, but this might be a time for us to say, then shut up and wrestle.
Yeah.
Go take that spot. Bryce Cannon just left a spot for however long he's out. There's a hole there. Shut up and go take the spot. Quit pissing and moaning about it behind, whatever here and there, and talking about like, oh, he wasn't the best and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, then show everybody. Quit saying he's not the guy and go take that spot and become that guy.
Right. There's more I could say with that. Get out and wrestle in front of more people. Wrestle at more places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could say a lot more.
I guarantee you this morning, Nick Halen ain't complaining where he fit on that list and where Bryce Cannon was. I guarantee you he woke up and look, he feels bad. I'm sure he does. On a personal level, he's like, dude, it sucks for Bryce. But he also sees the like, I'm gonna take. He was gonna try to take that spot regardless whether Bryce was healthy or not. Now that he's not there, feel bad for you, kid. Now I'm gonna go take my spot anyway.
Right.
How about you try that? Try that approach versus, well, he wasn't really the best wrestler in Georgia anyway. He wasn't the best. Okay, that's cool. Sorry.
Again, it's all subjective, but yeah, there's so much more we could say. Our last question of this week's mailbag, Stephen Taylor from Ball Ground, Georgia. What do you guys think of the rumors of guys not getting paid at a show this weekend? There were accusations made on social media, accusations that were confirmed. We'll just say they're rumors, they're accusations, nothing proven. I haven't talked to anyone who said, hey, I didn't get paid for this show.
Right.
What do I think about it? I think it's absolutely 100% terrible. It's uncalled for. It's unprofessional. What do you think?
So, yeah, we're not saying names because we don't have any. Like, we're just answering the question at this point, right? That hey, somebody's asking. Like, was it out there? Clearly, it was all over social media. I don't know whether it's true or not, but so we're going to approach it from this way. I don't even know if it happened. Mm-hmm. There's a big if there. If that happened, I don't even know how this happens anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I just can't. Now, look, the podcast has run one wrestling show ever. And I mean, dude, I went out of my way to make sure I was paying a ton of guys before the show started. And we had this conversation of when's the right time to pay them. Mm-hmm. You did make a great case that I had not thought of, but I think every scenario is different.
Right.
If you have a working relationship with a wrestler, there's a past there, they come into your show regularly. I saw it online as well. Every pay envelope should basically be done prior to the show.
Right.
And I do know promotions that do this, so we're not chastising everybody, obviously. They literally have every envelope, everybody's name written on them, and then, after their matches or before, they're just like, here you go, here you go, here you go, whatever. Mm-hmm. The timing, I think, is kind of the questionable. talents, promoters, owners, even whatever, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. When do you think that right time is? That's that's a good question. But you brought up an example, I guess. Go ahead and kind of explain like the other one that you brought to me. That was like, okay, that might be different.
Yeah. So when I was helping run shows, we pretty much communicated to the guys, hey, you get paid when the ring is loaded and everything's packed up and we're ready to go. That's when you get paid. And guys knew it, and guys knew, if I help get the ring loaded, then we get done a little quicker. I can get paid and we're home. Again, that was clearly communicated. I was at a show where an out of region wrestler was wrestling for the first time, and he didn't understand that was kind of like the practice at that promotion. And he was asking for his money, and he kind of got in with the promoter, and he never been back. And so I think it's all about communication. Hey, this is what we're going to pay you, and this is when we're going to pay you, and this is who's going to pay you. Like, hey, Charlie's going to have the envelopes, and that's who you see after your match. You see Charlie, he'll get you paid. And you tell them that 1,000 times, they're still going to go to the wrong person or whatever, or ask where their money is. But it's just communication, and not skip it out at intermission when you don't have the money for everybody.
Yeah, I think that was ultimately the dilemma. So I think, is there a ring crew? Is there not a ring crew? Do all the talents know that ahead of time coming in? Hey, we are booking you. We expect you to help with the ring. If they know that coming in, then there's no, hey, I didn't know. Or there's the guy that's going to respond back, I don't do that. Do you still want me at your show? And if you want him bad enough, you're like, oh, hey, we get it. And I was almost at a name, but I was just like, if you bring in Matt Cardona for a show, you are fully aware Matt Cardona's not helping break down the ring.
Right.
He's like, I want half my money up front, and then after my match, I want the rest of my money. Or when I show up at the building, let me explain something to talents out there. Matt Cardona in an email is going to tell you how you're going to pay him and what he's willing to accept from you as far as that return. He's not going to say, like, hey, when I show up after my match, or before the ring's torn down, or after the ring's torn down, you're going to pay me? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's how that works with Matt Cardona.
Right.
So just be clear. And I said, just be clear with how he's getting paid. And if your talents, because then there's no excuse. Like, hey, dude, we sent you the text, the email, DM, whatever. Yeah. This is how we do things. Yes or no, thumbs up. And I always used to tell people, I do it even with my job when I'm sending stuff. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this. I need you to respond, okay, that you understand that.
Yeah.
And they'll go, okay. And I'm like, then I have a text from you saying, you said you understood, that kind of thing. So, I just think if it happened, I go back to my same statement. I just can't wrap my head around that this even still happens.
Yeah, there was a pretty major promotion in the region, and they had booked a guy that I know to wrestle. And then I noticed that guy wouldn't get booked again. And I said, hey, I kind of thought this guy was kind of getting a run, and this guy didn't wrestle anymore. And I said, hey, what was kind of the reason? He's like, he never touched a board. I said, what are you talking about? It's like, he never helped with the ring. And like, we have an expectation, if you're on our show, you help with the ring. And he never helped with the ring, and we never booked him again. And it was a clear expectation, because if you hung around after their shows, you saw their guys helping with the ring. There's a lot of promotions that have training schools, and that's who sets up the ring. And so again, it's about communication, but the fact that in 2024 we have promotions not paying people an agreed upon rate. Like, you may agree you're not getting paid, we don't pay anybody. That's one thing. I think that's ridiculous. But that you're leaving allegedly. And so again, hey, if you have the scoop, tappedoutpod@gmail.com is where you can email us. Don't forget, patreon.com/tappedoutpod is where you can get bukus of new content that's going to be coming out. You can also become a member on YouTube. There's a paid subscription there you can do. Don't forget, like the videos, subscribe to the videos, hit that notification because you don't want to miss anything, because your friends are going to want to talk indie wrestling when you go out to Five Guys with them, and you want to have the best information you have. And that's why you need the Tapped In Indie Wrestling podcast. But we appreciate you listening. Nick, I'm looking forward to Friday night at Southern Honor.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast, man. Check us out. Like I said, it's another doubleheader weekend, man. I mean, Southern Honor and then Southern Fried. I mean, back to back. Hopefully it won't. Luckily, these drives aren't as long as the ones, so hopefully I'll rebound a lot better than I did this weekend for sure.
We just need that melatonin and magnesium. So, fans, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your continued support. And if we don't see you at the matches, we'll see you next time.